The cheese fondue was still bubbling when she looked up from her phone and said, "I'm going to meet him tonight." No hesitation. No shame. Just those exact 6 words, like she was saying she needed more pepper on her salad. She didn't even look at me, just kept scrolling, one perfectly manicured nail flicking through whatever shallow world existed in that glass screen. I didn't say anything at first. My hand froze midair, holding a piece of sourdough on a skewer that dripped cheese onto the tablecloth. That white linen one she insisted we only use for meaningful dinners. Apparently, betrayal counted. She finally met my eyes, calm as a lake that just swallowed a body. He's wealthy. He offered to show me some investment property. Then, with the audacity of someone who's never faced a consequence. Don't look at me like that. I'm doing this for us. For us. That was rich. I wanted to ask if us also included the perfume she'd bought last week labeled Desire, or the secret credit card I'd found hidden inside a tampon box, or the text message I saw on her smartwatch while she was in the shower, the one that said, "Let's see how far your husband will let you go." But I didn't ask anything. I just nodded. Slowly, quietly. She mistook that for permission. That was her first mistake. "I'll be back before midnight," she said, rising like a queen excusing herself from a feast. "Don't wait up." That was her second mistake. She walked out in silence. Not a word of affection, not a single glance back. She left the front door open longer than necessary. Maybe so I'd watch her walk away. I did. And the moment the taillights disappeared down our street, I reached under the couch cushion, pulled out the disposable phone I'd stashed there 3 weeks ago, and hit the only number saved in it. 3 rings. A gravel voice answered. "Is she in motion?" I stared at the half-eaten dinner across from me. The wine. The fake silver candle holders she ordered off Instagram. The life I built around lies I kept swallowing like pills. "She's on her way," I said. "Start the clock." The voice on the other end grunted. "Copy that. We'll be ready." I hung up, set the phone face down, and poured myself a glass of the wine she never liked. And I smiled, because she thought she was chasing a rich man. But what she didn't know was who he really was. I should have felt sick. Should have been pacing the living room, pulling at my hair, maybe even crying into the couch cushions like some tragic husband in a bad cable drama. But I wasn't. I was calm, which made it worse. There's something unnerving about sitting in the ruins of your own marriage and realizing you're too tired to scream anymore. Like betrayal doesn't even sting, it just drips, slow and sticky, until your dignity is soaking in it. I sat at the table for a long while, the silence only broken by the soft gurgle of the fondue pot still bubbling uselessly between 2 empty plates. She hadn't even touched hers. Said she was watching carbs. And yet, she was willing to dine on another man's wealth like it was her birthright. After about 15 minutes, I stood, cleared the table, and tossed her untouched plate into the sink a little harder than necessary. Something cracked. I didn't care. What mattered now was time. See, when I said start the clock, it wasn't a metaphor. It was a literal timeline, a plan my friend Travis and I had drafted 3 weeks ago after I showed him the first message I intercepted from the so-called rich man. It started as a joke. Travis said, "Let's test her." I said, "What? Like set up a fake guy?" He raised his beer and said, "No. Let's be the guy." Travis works in private tech consulting, has access to things I don't even understand. He created a whole identity, fake LinkedIn, digital portfolio, emails, crypto account, Airbnb listings, everything. The man Jenna thought she was meeting tonight, he didn't exist. But to her, he was real enough to risk our marriage for. She thought he was a millionaire property investor from Florida named Cole Martin. Single, recently divorced, emotionally intelligent. He complimented her taste in wine, sent her wireframe previews of fictional developments, told her she deserved more. She ate it up like caviar. And she agreed to meet him at a penthouse suite downtown that doesn't even belong to us. It's a rental Travis booked under a fake firm. Cameras in the living room. Microphones hidden in the roses. Even the doorman was paid off. Every move she makes in that suite tonight will be recorded. I wasn't doing this for revenge, not entirely. I was doing it for clarity. Because I needed to know. Was she really just that shallow? Would she really go through with it? Would she actually betray me face to face and still come home smiling? At 9:12 p.m., Travis texted. She just arrived. Red dress. Confident. I stared at the message for a long time. That red dress. I bought it for our anniversary. 3 years ago. She said it made her feel unstoppable. I just didn't know she meant that literally. I stood there, clutching my phone, the room too quiet again. And for a moment, it hit me. The weight of it all. The marriage, the years, the soft lies that built up like plaque around my heart. I almost texted Travis back and told him to shut it down. That I didn't want to see it. That I wasn't strong enough. But then another message came in. She's asking for champagne. She's laughing. Laughing. At what, I wonder? At me? At how easy it all was. I walked over to the fireplace, picked up the photo frame that held our wedding picture. Us on that cliffside, grinning, windswept, hopeful. I stared at it until my vision blurred. Then I turned it face down. And for the first time since she walked out that door, I spoke out loud. She really took the bait. But what she didn't know yet, what she couldn't even begin to imagine, was that she wasn't the only one being watched tonight. Because this trap, it had more than one spring. 10:30. That was the time the door closed behind her. Soft, deliberate, final. Travis confirmed it with a single text. She's in. He's entering. But he wasn't some romantic billionaire, or even a paid actor. The man walking into the room now wasn't wearing an expensive suit. He wore silence. Calm, dangerous silence. His name was Desmond. He used to work corporate security for a pharmaceutical company until they got caught skimming patents. He didn't just surveil people. He broke them. Emotionally. Psychologically. The kind of man you hire not to intimidate someone, but to expose them. Strip them down to their raw, unsellable self. A truth extractor. He owed Travis a favor. And now, for one night, Desmond was Cole Martin. I didn't want to know the details. I really didn't. But I needed to. That's the curse of betrayal. Once the seed is planted, it doesn't stop growing until it chokes out everything else inside you. So I sat in the den, laptop open, headphones in, watching the feed from the corner camera placed above the sweets bar area. There she was, Jenna, in that crimson dress that used to make my knees weak. Now it just made my stomach twist. She had her back to the door, sipping from a flute of champagne, lips pursed like she was already imagining herself on a yacht in some tropical port. Her posture screamed confidence, control, victory. She didn't know the war hadn't even started yet. Desmond entered like a shadow. Not loud, not cocky, just there, like a verdict. He greeted her with a nod, not a kiss. That was the first time I saw her falter. Just slightly. One eyebrow lifted. She wasn't expecting a cold entry. She was used to adoration. But he didn't flatter her. He asked questions. Not sexy ones. Not compliments about her appearance. He asked what she wanted, really wanted. What she thought she deserved. What she'd sacrificed to never feel trapped again. And Jenna, my wife, she answered. Not in hesitations. Not in hypotheticals. She told him that I was a sweet man but basic. That I peaked emotionally at 35. That I settled. She said she didn't want to feel like someone's charity case anymore. I sat there, hearing that, letting it pour in. She said I was a man who bought her supermarket flowers when she needed diamonds. That my simple loyalty had become a type of control. That she felt braver walking into this suite than she had on our wedding day. It was like watching someone rob your house and complain the furniture was cheap. But Desmond wasn't done. He asked her if she'd ever done this before. Met men, taken gifts, played the for the family card. She laughed and said, only when it made sense. I think I stopped breathing for a second. And then something shifted. Desmond stepped forward, leaned against the bar, and said something I'll never forget. He asked, if I told you your husband was watching right now, what would you say to him? The pause. It stretched like a crack in a windshield, spidering outward. Jenna blinked. Her lips twitched. The glass in her hand tilted slightly. I thought, maybe this was it. Maybe she'd realize. Maybe guilt would bloom. Maybe love still lived in there somewhere. She set her glass down. And then she smiled. Not nervously. Not regretfully. She smiled with teeth. I'd tell him, she said. Thanks for opening the door. That was the moment something in me collapsed. I don't know if it was love, trust, or just the last shred of denial I'd been clinging to. But it broke, clean and deep. And I didn't cry. Not then. Because I wasn't done watching. Desmond gave a short nod and stepped away. Walked out of frame. Jenna stood there, waiting. But he didn't come back. Instead, a screen on the wall flickered to life, and the room around her dimmed as video footage began to play. Not of her. Not of me. But of someone she never thought she'd see again. And that's when the real panic started. At first, she didn't even recognize the face on the screen. That was the most satisfying part. She stood there with one hand still resting lightly on the bar, brow furrowed, watching the flickering video as if trying to understand whether it was a security glitch or a setup. She tilted her head slightly, confused. But the moment her eyes finally locked onto the figure on the screen, the exact second it hit her who it was, something behind her expression cracked. Her fingers twitched. Her jaw flexed. "And I swear to God," she whispered, "no." The screen showed a grainy video from nearly 5 years ago, a hotel hallway, dim lighting, timestamp blinking faintly in the corner. At first glance, nothing extraordinary. But there, stumbling out of a room in a rush, was her, wrapped in a black trench coat, trying to hide her face behind oversized sunglasses, clutching her phone like it was a lifeline. Seconds later, another figure appeared in the frame. Not me. A man. Tall. Lean. Balding. Grinning. I had seen him once, briefly, at a conference dinner Jenna dragged me to when she was still pretending to support my career. I remember the way they spoke to each other like I wasn't there. He worked in regional investment. At least, that's what he claimed. I remember her laughing at his jokes, even though they weren't funny. I remember that laugh. It still echoes when I sleep. I never asked questions back then. I didn't want to know. She said it was professional. I believed her. But Travis didn't. And 3 weeks ago, Travis found that footage on a wiped server using metadata tied to her old email, one she thought had been deleted. That moment in the hallway, that interaction, it wasn't just an affair. It was an invitation. Back then, she said she had gone to visit a cousin in San Francisco. A cousin I'd never met. Who, apparently, lived in a hotel. On the screen, the man touched her back, casually, like it was familiar, like it wasn't the first time. And then he kissed her. It wasn't a goodbye. It was an afterthought. Routine. Rehearsed. The footage froze right there. On her face, blurry but unmistakably hers, glancing both ways before disappearing down the hallway like she'd done it before. In the suite, Jenna staggered back slightly. She looked around like the walls had started whispering. She was alone, but not really. Every second of her panic, I watched in real time. And I didn't feel angry. I felt clean. For the first time in months. She moved toward the screen, whispering something I couldn't hear. Her eyes started darting around, trying to find the camera. She knew, finally, that she wasn't in control. Not here. Not now. Then another clip began. This time it was audio, a recorded phone call from 2 weeks ago. Her voice came in clear. He doesn't even suspect anything. He's too loyal. Too boring. If this deal works out, I'll finally have an out. She said that. About me. I sat there, eyes burning, hand clenched so tight around the armrest of my chair I could feel the wood beneath the cushion. Travis had warned me. He said, "Are you sure you want to hear all of it?" But I needed to. I needed the poison out. And sometimes, you can't heal until the infection surfaces. The audio ended. Jenna stood frozen. No more pretending. Her mouth parted slightly, and for a moment, I thought she might collapse. But instead, she turned toward the suite's mirror across the room. She walked up to it and spoke to her own reflection. I didn't think you'd go this far. She wasn't talking to herself. She was talking to me. I guess deep down she knew, even if she didn't want to admit it, that I was watching. That the loyal, boring husband had finally stopped playing house. That maybe, just maybe, I had changed. But she hadn't seen everything yet. Because the next file that loaded, it wasn't a video. It was a contract. A marital exit agreement, with her digital signature already embedded. She just didn't know she signed it. Yet, the contract appeared on the screen the way guilt does in the human mind. Slowly at first, just a shadow, just a question, and then all at once, blinding. The electronic document filled the suite's TV, the crisp, white background looking almost surgical against the dim lighting. Jenna just stared at it, eyes narrowed, as if she could blink hard enough to change what she was seeing. I leaned closer to my laptop screen at home, heart pounding, hands ice cold. I had rehearsed this moment hundreds of times in my mind, but witnessing it in real time felt unreal, like I had stepped out of my own body and into someone else's story. The document was titled, Mutual Separation and Asset Realignment Agreement. It looked professional, sterile, corporate. But beneath the legal phrasing lived the truth. She had just signed away everything she thought she could leave me for. The signature wasn't forged. It wasn't coerced. It wasn't tricked. It was pulled from a digital authorization she had given earlier that week when she thought she was authorizing permission for a property portfolio review to impress her wealthy investor. She clicked accept herself. I didn't even have to touch her hand. That was the part that kept replaying in my head. She signed her fate not because she was forced to, but because she believed the world owed her something prettier than loyalty. That she deserved champagne lifestyle and men who pretended admiration was love. That I was merely the default setting of her life, something to upgrade from when the timing was right. In the suite, she stepped closer to the screen, eyes moving rapidly across the text. And then she saw the line that mattered, the one that settled everything. Full marital property and liquid accounts transferred to husband upon declaration of emotional abandonment by wife. There was no screaming, no dramatic gasp, no fainting onto the couch like in some badly written soap opera. It was quieter than that, more human, more terrifying. Her knees softened, her shoulders sank the way flowers do when the vase water turns cloudy. She exhaled, a long, slow, trembling breath, the kind you only make when your world finally admits its ending. I realized, sitting there in the dim light of my den, watching her unravel mile by mile away from me, that I wasn't thrilled. I wasn't satisfied. There was no surge of triumph, no sense of see, I won. It was emptier than that, like I had traded one hollow space in my chest for another. Because winning still means something was lost. My phone buzzed on the table. Travis again. We move in phase 2. I didn't answer right away. I stood up, pacing the living room, stepping over the remnants of the dinner that now felt like props from a play I was no longer in. I could hear muffled sounds from the live audio feed. Not crying, not fury, just her breathing. Deep, uneven, shaky. The sound of someone realizing the ground beneath them was never solid to begin with. Part of me wanted to call off the rest. To shut down the stream, call a cab, bring her home, avoid the final crack of everything breaking open. Tell her we'd go to therapy, or counseling, or pretend none of this happened. I could almost see that future. Us sitting in a carpeted waiting room with a sanitized vase of fake flowers, holding hands but not really touching. But then I remembered her voice on that recorded call. The way she said, he's too loyal, too boring. If this works out, I'll finally have an out. That sentence didn't just bruise. It rotted. I picked up the phone and typed back. Yes, do it. In the suite, the screen changed again. Jenna lifted her head, and the moment she saw who walked into the room next, her expression didn't just crack. It shattered, because the person who stepped inside was not Desmond, was not the fake investor, was not Travis. It was someone she never thought would stand on the other side of her decisions. Someone who had known her before me, before us, before she built a life pretending she was only halfway out the door. Someone who had the power to uproot everything she believed she was entitled to. Her mother. She didn't speak when her mother entered the suite. For a full 15 seconds, Jenna didn't even move. She just stared, the same way someone does when a door they never expected to open swings wide and shows the one person they spent their entire life trying to impress or lie to. Her mother, Irene, walked in calmly, dressed in one of her usual cashmere wraps and carrying a small brown envelope in her hand. No fanfare, no theatrics, just that signature no-nonsense look that always made me feel like I was being silently graded. Irene hadn't spoken to me in nearly 2 years. I always suspected she didn't think I was enough for her daughter, even if she never said it out loud. And yet, it was Irene who contacted me 3 weeks ago, out of nowhere, with one sentence in her message. I believe you deserve the truth. I didn't know what she meant at first, but it became clear when she sent me screenshots. Audio. A voice recording Jenna had left on her voicemail by mistake. It was short, 10 seconds, but enough to change everything. In it, Jenna said, "Don't worry, Mom. I'm not going to stay with him much longer. I'm just playing the game until the numbers add up." That was the moment Irene stopped defending her daughter. Now, standing in that suite across from her grown child, Irene's expression didn't shift. Not once. But Jenna? She buckled like a child about to get scolded, and not just by a parent, but by someone who knew every lie she'd ever dressed up as a lifestyle choice. "Mom," Jenna finally said, voice shaky, hollow. "What are you doing here?" Irene didn't answer immediately. Instead, she placed the envelope on the marble bar between them and said, very softly, "I came to watch." To watch what? Jenna asked, tone sharper now, panic leaking in. I watched from my living room, eyes glued to the screen. I could feel every emotion ricocheting inside me. A year ago, the idea of her mother and I being on the same side would have felt absurd. But betrayal rearranges the alliances of your life. Sometimes all it takes is one ugly truth to tear through decades of denial. I raised you better than this, Irene said at last. No shouting, just disappointment, which somehow always cuts deeper. Jenna folded her arms, trying to recover. So what, you're siding with him now? With Caleb? You always said he was stable, Irene interrupted. I said he was stable, and you turned that into boring. That's not my failing. That's yours. Jenna blinked, visibly rattled. This is a trap. It's a mirror, her mother replied, and you've been avoiding it for years. At that moment, Travis switched the feed. The screen in the suite now displayed a digital ledger. Every transaction Jenna had made in the last 4 months. Luxury hotel rooms booked under pseudonyms. Jewelry delivered to strange addresses. Consulting fees wired to accounts that didn't exist until she needed a lie. Jenna turned pale, not because she didn't remember the money, but because she never thought it would all be traced. Not like this. Not in front of her mother. You set me up, Jenna hissed. Both of you. I wanted to laugh at that. Set her up? As if we'd scripted her selfishness, choreographed her betrayal, written the dialogue for the things she chose to say when she thought no one was listening. No, we didn't set her up. We just pressed record. Back in the suite, Irene pushed the envelope toward her daughter with one finger. Jenna stared at it like it might explode. What is this? She whispered. Your choice, Irene replied. You can sign it now, or you can wait for the lawyers to drag it through court. Either way, you're not coming back from this. I knew what was inside. It was a clean, final financial separation document. I'd offered her a simple out, no countersuits, no humiliation, no public disclosure. If she signed that document tonight and admitted everything on record. But what I didn't expect was what came next. Jenna didn't reach for the envelope. She turned to the wall camera, the one she knew I was watching from. And then she did something that stopped my heart. She started clapping. Slow, sarcastic, hollow claps that echoed through the suite like something out of a nightmare. Bravo, she said, smiling without warmth. You win, Caleb. You finally grew a spine. Took you long enough. Then she stepped closer to the camera, too close, and leaned in. But just remember this. I was never yours. Not really. And the only reason you got this far is because I let you. The screen flickered. Travis muted the feed. I sat there in the silence that followed, more confused than satisfied, more heartbroken than victorious. That's the thing no one tells you about revenge. When it works, it still leaves a hole. I wanted to feel free. Instead, I felt empty. But there was still one piece left. She hadn't seen who was waiting outside the suite's door yet. And once she did, she'd realized that the game she thought she was playing, it was already over. If I'd known who would end up standing on the other side of that hotel suite door, I think I would have called everything off. Not because I regretted it. Not because Jenna didn't deserve the fallout she was finally choking on. But because the moment I saw his face on the security feed, tall, tan, blazer too sharp for a regular Thursday night, something in me unraveled that I didn't even know I was holding together. It was Ryan, my younger brother. Not Travis. Not Desmond. Not another decoy actor in this twisted setup. My own blood. He stepped into the suite without hesitation. Confident. Relaxed. Like he knew the ending before the third act even started. Jenna turned when she heard the door click, her face already mid-eye roll, expecting another lecture from someone connected to me. But when she saw Ryan, and really saw him, the smirk vanished. It didn't fade. It dropped. You know that moment in your life when you suddenly realize someone else has been holding the steering wheel of your future, and they've already driven it off a cliff? Yeah, that was the look on her face. I stared at the live feed, trying to make sense of it. My brain felt like it had fallen behind the moment. Like it was buffering reality. What the hell was Ryan doing there? He was supposed to be in Chicago. Last I heard, he was launching some crypto analytics startup and dating a yoga instructor who spelled her name with 3 Ys. We hadn't spoken in 6 months. We were never close. Too many years of rivalry. Too many jabs about how he was the successful one, and I was the safe bet. I didn't even tell him about Jenna's affair. So how the hell was he here? And why was Jenna now backing away from him like he was radioactive? Ryan, she whispered. What is this? He didn't answer right away. He simply looked at her with the quiet disappointment of a man who's seen the behind-the-scenes footage of someone's life, the uncut version. Then he turned, looked straight at the sweet camera, and said my name. Caleb, you watching? I couldn't breathe. I leaned toward the screen like an idiot, as if getting closer would make this make sense. This isn't just about her, Ryan continued. You need to hear everything. And I didn't want to tell you this on the phone. I needed you to see it. All of it. Jenna's mouth opened, ready to interrupt, but Ryan held up a hand. Calmly, almost apologetically. 3 years ago, he said, she came to me. Not the other way around. Said she was lonely. Said you were obsessed with your spreadsheets and safety nets. That you didn't see her anymore. That she wanted to feel alive again. And yeah, I was stupid. I said yes. I felt like I was underwater. Every sound muffled. Every nerve on fire. I think I stood up at some point. Maybe cursed. Maybe screamed into a pillow. I don't remember. The moment blurred into a surreal haze of betrayal layered on betrayal. Jenna had an affair, not just with some faceless investor fantasy. Not just with people I'd never meet. She'd cheated with my own brother. Ryan looked at her, then back at the camera. I ended it. A year ago, I told her to come clean. But she didn't. Instead, she doubled down. Found other men. Started chasing money. She lied to you, and to herself. And I let it slide because I thought you were better off not knowing. But now I see that was a mistake. Jenna's voice was barely audible. You're doing this now? Like this? Ryan didn't flinch. You already did it. I'm just turning the lights on. The worst part? I wasn't surprised. Somewhere deep inside, I always knew there was something more behind her distance. Something beyond the late nights and empty apologies. The way she flinched when I said Ryan's name. The way she rushed out of family dinners. I just didn't let myself name it. But now it had a name. A face. My brother. My phone buzzed again. Travis, do you want us to stop the feed? I didn't reply, because at that moment, I wasn't sure what I wanted anymore. I had built this whole plan, mapped every twist, scripted every reveal, to catch her in the act and show her the cost of betrayal. But I never imagined she'd already delivered the worst blow years before this night even began. And yet, something inside me wasn't crushed. It was cleared, because now there was no more guessing, no more gray areas, no more gaslighting or self-doubt or pretending maybe I had misunderstood her coldness. Now it was official. She wasn't just unfaithful. She was calculated. And whatever came next, I would face it as a man who had finally stopped apologizing for not being a fantasy. The last feed cut to black. Jenna's voice echoed one final time before the audio shut off. You'll regret this, Caleb. But I didn't. Because regret is for people who didn't already live through the worst. The final recording ended at 11:48 p.m. Just silence after that. Not even the soft sound of the suite's ventilation system. Like the entire night exhaled and went still. I stared at the laptop screen, blank now, like everything that needed to be seen had been seen. The camera had done its job. The documents were signed. The mask was off. And I wasn't angry anymore. Just still. A strange kind of quiet had taken hold of me. Not numbness, not victory. Something better. A quiet that felt earned. Like walking out of a burning house barefoot, bruised, blistered, and blinking into the sunrise. I slept for 3 hours that night, the best 3 hours I'd had in months. By morning, Jenna had already tried to contact me 12 times. No apologies. No ownership. Just the usual spiral of half explanations and fake vulnerability. It wasn't real. I didn't think you'd take it this far. You're being dramatic. We can fix this. You just need to stop letting people interfere. I didn't respond. Not once. Not even to say goodbye. I had already packed. By noon, I'd left the keys in a plain envelope on the kitchen counter and walked out of the house we used to share. I didn't take the furniture, or the art, or the appliances we picked out on lazy Sunday afternoons. She could have all of it. What I did take was mine. The deed to the lake property she didn't know I'd kept in my name, the retirement accounts her rich flings would never touch, and a letter from her mother, handwritten, that ended with, "You may not have been my choice for her, but you were the better man. I'm sorry it took me this long to see it." I moved to a cabin north of the city. Just quiet. Clean air. Peace. Travis visited once, brought a bottle of cheap whiskey, and laughed for 2 hours straight. Said I finally looked alive again. That was the first time I realized he was right. I hadn't even noticed the change. I just felt lighter. 2 weeks later, I started going to the lake every morning. No phone, no noise, just a kayak and fog and time. And one day, without even trying, I met someone. Her name was Marin. She ran the local general store. Not glamorous, not flashy, just kind, curious, calm. She asked me what I did, and I told her the truth. I used to spend my whole life trying to be enough for someone who never wanted to stay. She didn't flinch, just nodded. Sounds exhausting, she said. It was. Good thing you're not there anymore. And just like that, it didn't feel like I was. That was 6 months ago. Today, the divorce is finalized. No court battles. No drama. Jenna tried to contest parts of the contract until the recordings were reviewed by her attorney. After that, she went quiet. Publicly, she blamed communication issues. Privately, she sent one last message. You really left. You actually walked away. Yeah, I did. Because there comes a moment when the person you were clinging to finally lets go of the illusion, and you see who you've become in their absence. And sometimes, that person, that new version of yourself, he's someone worth staying for.